Welcome to ITIL Practices Part 4 module. By the end of this module, you'll be able to explain the following ITIL practices in detail: change enablement, service request management, service level management, and the definition of change. The next practice to consider is change enablement. The purpose of this practice is to maximize the number of successful IT changes by ensuring that risks have been properly assessed, authorizing changes to proceed, and managing a change schedule. ITIL defines change as the addition, modification, or removal of anything that could have a direct or indirect effect on services. This is another one of those terms you may need to recall in the ITIL Foundation exam. It is quite a broad definition, and typically it includes all IT infrastructure, applications, documentation, processes, supplier relationships, and anything else that might directly or indirectly impact a product or service. However, each organization will have to clearly define which types of change will be within scope of change enablement, and which will not. Various factors will influence this decision. For example, level of risk, the need to keep configuration management data up to date, internal and/or external regulatory requirements, the need for visibility and awareness of the change. Once the scope is determined, it is important that it is rigorously enforced so that all changes which fall within scope are logged and managed. The pace of change in modern business is frenetic, and changes come in all different shapes and sizes, large or small, routine or high risk, simple or complicated. Change enablement must balance the need to handle high volumes of change smoothly and efficiently while protecting customers and users from the potential risks. This means that the approach to change enablement must be scalable so that an appropriate but not unnecessary level of rigor and control is applied to the assessment and authorization of each type of change. All changes should be assessed by people who are able to understand the risks and the expected benefits, and then authorized before they are deployed. The person or group who authorizes a change is known as a change authority and should be known for each type of change. If a change is not authorized, it is sent for review and closure. Although there will be many different individual types of change, they fall into three major type categories: standard, normal, and emergency. Standard changes are low-risk, pre-authorized changes that are well understood and fully documented, and can be implemented without needing additional authorization. They are often initiated as service requests, but may also be operational changes. When the procedure for a standard change is created or modified, there should be a full risk assessment and authorization as for any other change. This risk assessment does not need to be repeated each time the standard change is implemented, only if there is a modification to the way it is carried out. This reduces the bureaucracy involved in these changes, making it easier to get them done. It also has the benefit of freeing up change enablement resources to focus on those changes that actually require their attention. Examples of standard changes could include, for example, the installation on a user's workstation of company-approved software, the creation of a new user login, the replacement of a failing device with an identical model and configuration, for example, a switch or router. Emergency changes are those that must be introduced as soon as possible, and where the urgency is such that it may not be possible to fully follow the normal processes. For example, in an emergency situation where the cost of delay may be greater than the risk of failure, it may be necessary to accept the risks associated with reduced levels of assessment and testing. Emergency changes need to be authorized, but an emergency change authority may be defined for such situations to expedite authorization. Also, documentation activities such as creating a change record or updating configuration data may be deferred until the emergency is over. However, please note, emergency does not mean no rules. While it is not possible to predict every scenario, emergency change models should define the change authority and the acceptable approach to testing and assessment in different situations. Examples of emergency change are more to do with the circumstances than the type of change. For example, the routine application of security patches could be treated as a standard change, whereas the non-routine application of a patch, for example in response to active and ongoing security threat, might be treated as an emergency change. Every change that is not a standard or emergency change is treated as a normal change, which needs to be assessed, authorized, and scheduled following the normal process for that change type. The actual steps followed will vary from one type of change to another, but should be documented in a change model along with the roles for assessment and authorization. Some normal changes will be low risk, and the change authority for these is usually someone who can make a quick decision. These are the types of change that, if they occur often enough, are likely to become standard changes at some point. Other normal changes might be high risk and high cost, and the change authority could be as high as the Board of Management. Normal changes are initiated by the creation of a change request and are managed using a change schedule, which is a calendar view of planned and completed changes. Some changes may have date dependencies. For example, a change which must go live on a certain date. Some change types may have service level targets for their completion, and other changes may have dependencies associated with other changes. For example, a change which must go live with or after another change. Taking these and any other factors into account, the change schedule is used to plan changes, avoiding conflicts while making the best use of available resources. The change schedule is also a communication tool which can be used to keep any interested parties informed of upcoming and recently implemented changes. It might be helpful to illustrate the different types of change with examples. Consider the company providing the internet-based language learning application we used as an example earlier in the course. As demand for the application is increasing, the fastest growing department within this organization is the authoring team, who develop the training materials in different languages. Currently, on average, a new language expert joins the team every 4 to 6 weeks. The authoring team is based at the company's head office, and the onboarding process involves the installation and build of a new workstation at the user's allocated desk, including PC, printer, and telephone, and the creation of a login for the new recruit to give them access to the relevant office systems and course authoring software that they will need. As the authoring tool is licensed from a third-party software publisher on a per-user basis, additional checks are necessary to ensure that a spare license is available, and, if not, another license is procured, and the costs allocated to the authoring team. There is quite a lot of activity involved in this process, but by now the steps are very well known and documented in a procedure. The change enablement team assigned this to the status of standard change as soon as it was clear that there was no additional value in them being involved in this activity. The manager of the authoring team has realized, however, that if the trend continues, there will soon be no physical space to accommodate any more authors at head office. She decides to pilot a home working project. She has identified 5 experienced authors from her existing team who are willing to work from home. This has not been tried before within the company, so there is no standard solution for this. The manager therefore raises a change request and submits it to change enablement for assessment, authorization, and scheduling. This is a normal change. A few weeks into the homeworking pilot, very late one evening, a system administrator for the company notices that one of the homeworkers has just logged on and is making changes to the live system. As this is very unusual, the administrator decides to call the homeworker, who confirms that he is not, in fact, currently logged on. The administrator quickly realizes that this is in fact a breach of security and takes immediate action to close the session down. Not knowing the extent of the damage already done and the potential for further breaches, the administrator decides to inhibit all remote system access and restore the system from backups taken immediately before the unauthorized access. This would mean that any users currently using the application would be dropped off and would lose any work they had done in the last 20 minutes. He has authority in an emergency situation to close the system to prevent further corruption. But restoring from backup and impacting potentially on thousands of users would need further authorization. This organization has defined a very simple emergency change process. Following this, he calls the company's managing director, who gives his approval for immediate action, but also requests that he informs the marketing manager and the authoring team manager immediately. The next practice to consider is service request management. The purpose of this practice is to support the agreed quality of a service by handling all predefined user-initiated service requests in an effective and user-friendly manner. A service request is a request from a user or a user's authorized representative that initiates a service action that has been agreed as a normal part of service delivery. Types of service request include requests for a service action, for example, restore a backup or move an employee from one desk to another. Requests for information, for example, how to create a document or for information about support hours. Requests for provision of a resource or service, for example, providing a phone or laptop to a user or install an approved software package. Requests for access to a resource or service, for example, create new user or change a user's permissions. Feedback, for example, complaints about a new interface or compliments to a support team. A service request may be placed by a user or, on their behalf, by a nominated representative, for example, their line manager. The range of service requests available is usually documented in user-facing views of the organization's service catalog, and they should be accessible in a convenient and actionable way. For example, some requests may be available to order online, while other requests might need to be logged with the service desk. For each request in a service catalog, the following information is usually maintained: the service to which a service request belongs, any prerequisites or conditions for submitting the request, the information that is required to initiate the request, additional approvals necessary, if any, for example, HR or financial, target fulfillment time. Some service requests may be very simple, while others might be very complex. However, as they are predefined and pre-agreed, the steps necessary to fulfill each type of request should be well known and documented in a request model. Some requests may initiate changes. These are usually standard changes, but can sometimes be a normal change. Clearly documenting the steps involved in each request type in a request model allows the service provider to agree target times for fulfillment and to provide clear communication of the status of the request to users. Service request management depends upon well-designed processes and procedures, and benefits from the use of automation tools to maximize the efficiency of the practice wherever possible. Some service requests, for example password resets, can be completely fulfilled with automation, from submission to closure. The following guidelines are helpful. Service requests should be standardized and automated to the greatest degree possible. Policies should establish which service requests can be fulfilled with limited or no additional approval, so that fulfillment can be streamlined. User expectations regarding fulfillment times should be clearly and realistically set. Requests that are submitted as service requests, but which should actually be managed as incidents or changes, are redirected. Regarding this last point, it is quite common for users to attempt to report incidents as requests, and the other way around. For example, a user calls the service desk to place a request for an engineer to replace a printer toner cartridge. But during the discussion, the desk analyst discovers that the cartridge is empty because the printer failed to display a low toner status. There is a fault on the device, and this should be logged as an incident. And the other way round. It should be explained to a user attempting to report an incident because a printer is displaying a low toner status message that this will be recorded and managed as a service request. The same applies with service requests and requests for change. Where it works well, users will come to appreciate the speed and convenience of the request fulfillment process, and will sometimes consciously or unconsciously attempt to use request management for changes which should go through formal change enablement. For example, the installation of pre-approved software may be available via request fulfillment, but if a customer or user identifies a software package that they would like to have installed which is not in the pre-approved list, this would normally require assessment and authorization through change enablement. Finally, in this session, let's consider service level management. As discussed in the first session of this course, historically, IT organizations were often focused on technology rather than service, and the measures and metrics they have used to manage and report performance have reflected this, often to the frustration of the business and detriment of the service relationship. So, the purpose of service level management is to set clear, business-based targets for service performance so that the delivery of a service can be properly assessed, monitored, and managed against these targets. Service level management focuses on the whole service, end-to-end, and not simply on its constituent parts, in order to establish a shared view of the services and target service levels with customers, through the collection, analysis, and reporting of the relevant metrics, ensuring that these targets are met. Capture and report on service issues, including performance against defined service levels. Conduct service reviews to ensure the current set of services and service levels continue to meet the needs of the organization and its customers. Good relationship management, business liaison and analysis skills, listening and information gathering skills are essential attributes for this practice. Service level management aims to identify metrics and measures that are meaningful to the customer and are a truthful reflection of the customer's actual experience. These are documented in a Service Level Agreement, or SLA. An SLA is an agreement between a service provider and a customer that identifies both the services required and the expected level of service. A key word in this definition is agreement. The SLA should be an agreement which is reached through positive engagement and discussion between the two main parties in the service relationship, the service provider and the service consumer, although the degree to which the service consumer is involved will vary depending on the type of service and the nature of the service relationship. For example, in the case of mass delivery and consumption, where services are delivered to thousands or millions of consumers in a predefined, out-of-the-box manner, the service provider will seek to engage with their customers in meaningful ways in order to understand their needs and wishes. But the customers, usually, will have to either accept the service levels defined by the service provider or not use the service at all. In a different situation, the consumer may be in the driving seat, for example, specifying very detailed service requirements they have for a purpose-built or tailored service, and the service providers are in the situation of deciding whether or not they can and want to offer the service. In either case, the service level agreement needs to be acceptable to and agreed by both parties. They should be clearly and simply written in terms which are easy to understand and use for all parties. Targets within an SLA should relate to defined outcomes and not simply operational metrics. In other words, a customer is not really interested in whether system availability was 99.5%. What they're really interested in is the impact that 0.5% non-availability had on the business. ITIL warns about the danger of having service-level targets which are too narrow in focus or based on operational metrics such as system availability or incident resolution. While these are important metrics, they should be part of a balanced bundle of metrics which reflect the performance of and customer satisfaction with the service as a whole. If a customer is dissatisfied with the level of service they are receiving, there are really only two possible explanations. Either the service is not good enough and needs to improve, or the service is good, but for some reason the customer does not perceive it to be. Service level management ensures that the risk of either situation is managed. By working with the customer to agree target service metrics which truly reflect the business's needs, service level management ensures that all of the service provider efforts are appropriately focused on the achievement of these targets. And by regularly reporting and reviewing the metrics, it ensures that the customer has a true understanding of service quality, for better or for worse. Through regular engagement with the customer, service level management ensures that services and service levels offered continue to meet the needs of the organization. And by managing the customer experience of the service, SLM demonstrates that the customer is valued and understood, resulting in more positive, constructive partnerships.